Hey folks, how you doing? Welcome to Moment of Clarity. Thanks for joining me today. I'm going to dig into the mainstream media and their lies about our economy, which are Biden's lies as well, because we live in an inverted totalitarian system in which the corporate entities control the government. So the government is our mainstream media. The mainstream media is our government in many ways. With some slight little, they tinker around the edges to make you think things are different on this channel or that channel, but it's essentially all the same shit. I'm going to get into some good news about Assange and those who work with him. I'm going to get into some good news about U.S. labor movement, workers fighting back. And I'm going to show you, and I might even get into some other stories, depending on how much time we have. And I'm going to get into showing you the latest episode of Most Censored News. You'll get to see that as well. So thanks for being here. Please click the thumbs up and the likes and the joins and the thingamajiggers and all of that stuff. Please do it. So yes, let's dig into PBS NewsHour. For most of you know, PBS is it's considered this legacy media. They are telling the truth. If you ask your average liberal in America, they're telling the truth. If you ask your average right winger, then it's all liberal media. Fox News is telling the truth when they're all full of shit. So just in different ways. It's just a different brand of shit, a different smell of shit. But all right, so this is PBS NewsHour. And I just thought I'd look up their episode from yesterday, see how they're covering things, see the bullshit they're purveying. And I'm sorry I use that word so much, but is there any better word than bullshit? All right, so here is PBS NewsHour, and I'm gonna do this thing where I play it, and he'll get out like 2 words before I have to interrupt and yell at him. So I might as well just click play.
Good evening. We are learning more this week about the strength of the U.S. economy and whether...
That's a little fast. I know that I often play it on fast forward, but maybe we should do 1.1 instead of 1.5 so they don't sound like the Muppets or something. Wait, no, it wasn't Muppets. It was Alvin and Chipmunks, right?
High inflation and rising interest rates are pushing it into a recession.
Tomorrow,
because I'll be digging in that in a minute, I'm going to let that bullshit stand for a moment. You get away with this one, news anchor host, dude.
the Federal Reserve is expected to raise interest rates by another 1/4 of a point.
All right, let's analyze this one sentence before we keep going and realize the depths. So one thing, many of you know that one of the things I go through is I go through the layers of reality. Now, if you want to debate this on the surface layer, the front and center, the stuff you will get from your mainstream media, then you would just go, well, Federal Reserve is going to expect to raise interest rates, and what's the impact of that? What do you think that'll do? Now, if you want to get into actually deeper what this means, what is going on here, then hopefully you tune into me, because this is the deeper side of this. When you say the word Federal Reserve, you have to pause there and go, oh, you mean that partially private, yes, partially public, but mainly private entity that controls our central banking. There is no reason these sociopaths who are unelected, I remind you, yes, our democratic so-called quote-unquote system is bought off and fake anyway, but even in the fake democratic system, they're not even in that. They stand outside of that, the Federal Reserve Board of Governors. They are appointed by the sociopath who had to go through the rigged democratic system. So just saying the words Federal Reserve and not pausing and going, oh, those fucking unelected sociopaths, just that, propaganda, done. 2 words, done. Federal Reserve without adding unelected private entity. Yes, and partially public, but mainly private entity. By the way, the central banks and bankers that create our money at the Federal Reserve, they make billions a year by creating our money. And I remember arguing about this with someone who thought they were way smarter than me. And they said, no, they don't make any money by creating our money. They return it to the Treasury. They don't make any. But look it up on Wikipedia. Wikipedia, the liberal bastion of truth. If you look up Federal Reserve in Wikipedia, it'll say oh yeah, they make our money and they give back something like 97 or whatever, not maybe it's 99.7% of it, but whatever the percentage is, if you calculate the percentage they don't give back when they create our money, it's billions of dollars. So they keep billions of dollars for themselves simply by making our money out of thin air. Anyway, so that just those two words. So let's pause there and examine those two words, but let's keep going. Well, and then to get to the rest of the sentence. Sorry, I almost forgot there's a rest of the sentence. I spent 5 minutes tearing apart the garbage of just those two words. Federal Reserve expected to raise interest rates again tomorrow by 1/4 point. Why is the Federal Reserve right now raising interest rates? Well, the real reason, not the fake reason, not the bullshit reason you'll get from the Federal Reserve or the Federal Reserve chair or any of these people, but the real reason is because they are terrified at the power that workers have gained over the past year or a couple of years. Workers have gained a lot of power. All of a sudden, workers can stand up and say, you know what? I'm working from home, fuckface. I'm not. Why do you need me in an office? Why do you need me drinking your crappy coffee? Why is that required? And so workers have said, I'm working from home. I'm working from a distance. You know what? I can sexually harass myself in my home without you. So workers have been doing that, but they've been going on strike. They've been demanding more money. They've been demanding perks. All of a sudden, workers have power. And that power seems to keep increasing because workers are striking more and more. Let me show you a stat on that real quick. Let's see here. U.S. labor strikes went up almost 50% between 2021 and 2022. That is why the Federal Reserve is increasing interest rates, because traditionally increasing interest rates creates a recession. It causes people to be laid off. It causes companies to, quote unquote, tighten their belts. They lay people off. They fire people. They get rid of people. They get rid of that because they have to tighten their belts. And so what does that do? That makes workers more needy for whatever job they can get. All of a sudden, workers have less power. That is what the Federal Reserve is doing, and they're doing it on behalf of the ruling class. They are the ruling class. They are the unelected sociopaths that run this system. So at the heart of it, that's the real reason they're raising interest rates is because workers have an amount of power that we haven't seen in a long time, and they are now stopping that. But of course, none of this can you get from PBS NewsHour. This is not what PBS NewsHour does. Their job is to lie to you about what's going on and make you think that the Federal Reserve, among other things, has your best interest at heart. And that's the real reason that they're raising interest rates. They're trying to help you out. They're trying to stop inflation. That's what they're doing. Inflation, well, we'll get into that more in a moment. I'll save that rant for a second. So all of that explanation was for one sentence on PBS NewsHour. I mean, honestly, this is what if you want to watch mainstream media, and keep in mind, most of America does still watch mainstream media, whether it's PBS or CNN or NBC or Fox News or all this garbage. Most of America still does, and they have essentially none of this understanding. And I'm not saying I understand everything, but I understand this, and none of this is spoken from your mainstream media. Ever. I mean, ever. Just about. When was the last time you heard anyone in your mainstream media go, Federal Reserve? Oh, yeah, unelected sociopaths. Fucking never. Fucking never. Because that is their job, is to make sure you don't think about that. You don't think about these lower layers of reality. That is their job.
On Friday, the next labor report will show whether job growth is slowing even further.
Oh, job growth is slowing. You're saying recession. You're saying workers jobs are not as secure. Not as you can't rely on them. They're more worried to strike. They don't have quite the power. They're more worried to step up to their boss and say, hey, I got an idea, boss. Could you take your hand off my ass? See, they feel less comfortable doing that, right? Because hiring is decreasing.
And the showdown over the debt ceiling and the threat of default this summer is hardly over.
I'll talk more about the debt ceiling in a moment. That's one of the stupidest pieces of shit that's ever been created. The debt ceiling. I'll get more of that in a second.
All of that may add to the sense that the economy is on a knife's edge, but a recession is not a given. In fact, yesterday, the international.
So here's another thing that your mainstream media can never tell you. So to get to the deeper levels of reality, on one hand, we all live on kind of multiple levels of reality, and I've mentioned this before. On one level, you want to interact with your friends and family as if they're human beings, and you can talk to them. On another level, you're all energy, like fucking particles, and when you actually touch someone, you never actually touch them because you don't touch anything, because you are actually being repelled by the force of the electrons. Is that what it is? Anyway, but the point is you never touch anything. You never touch the chair you're sitting on. You're not actually touching it because you are mostly empty space, and it's the repellent forces. And in fact, if you didn't have those repellent forces, you'd actually go through it because you're mostly empty space. Now, we don't behave like that when we speak to someone. You don't walk up to them and go, hey, we're all energy, but you're just energy. Well, I'm not even. No, you behave on a certain plane of reality. Well, the same can go for these type of discussions. On one level of the plane of reality, you can talk about recession and how we don't want to go into a recession because it will harm people. It will stop people from having the jobs they need. It'll stop people from having the money they need in order to take care of their kids, take care of their family, pay their mortgage. So recession equals bad, right? Everyone knows that. And in many ways, that is true. It's not like I want people to lose their jobs and be struggling, etc. So in many ways, that is true. Recession is bad. But there is a deeper level in which capitalism is the idea of infinite growth on a planet with limited resources. So at some point, there has to be recession or we all die. Like, you cannot have infinite growth, whether it be in the buildings you're building, which, by the way, can we agree building is one of the stupidest words? Like in other languages, I've heard they call a building a built because it's done. So why would you call it a building? But it also, by calling it a building rather than having some other word for it, we have to sit there and go, well, we're building buildings. That's the dumbest shit. English is dumb. Fucking, we're building buildings? Yeah, and then I'm going to run some runs. No, you call it a race. We have a different word for it. You don't run some runs unless you've got the runs, and that's different. So building's a dumb word. See, you learn something. If you walk away from this with nothing else, just learn that building is a dumb word, because then you got to say we're building buildings. But in all ways, whether it's building buildings, whether it's the amount we're eating, whether it's the amount of kids we're having, whether it's the amount of trees we're cutting down, in every way, we cannot grow forever. And yet the idea of infinite capitalism is the idea of infinite growth. And we want our economy to endlessly grow. We want it all to just keep bubbling up and keep growing and growth. And when it's not growing, it's recession and it's bad and it's terrible. But I think we all die, though, if there's no recession, if things never recede, if we never back up off of this precipice of cutting down all the trees, eating all the animals, and killing all the bugs. If we don't back off that, we all die. But instead, we are told to only talk on that surface level of reality. Recession equals bad because it means people lose jobs, people struggle. End of discussion. Never get lower than that. Never dig deeper. Never figure out what capitalism really is. And again, that is our job, the job of the economy, job of the mainstream media, our media in general, and many of your other independent talking heads, independent hosts, whatever. If they aren't getting down to some of these layers, then fucking stop listening to them. Because if they're just living up here, I mean, like if their entire analysis of what I'm playing right now is just Republicans are causing recession, or Federal Reserve causing recession. If that's the end of their discussion of it, they never get deeper, then they aren't giving you the truth either. So why are you turning that shit on? Like, get something deeper. And hopefully that's why you're here. But we should be able to have both of these discussions. We should be able to have a discussion where I say to you, you know what? I want people to have jobs. I want people to be able to take care of their kids and have a house and a roof over their head. I want all of those things for every one of you out there because I care about you. You're my besties. And I want to see all those good things for you. No, I really do, actually. I want to see all those good things for you. But also, we should be able to have the discussion of we live in a system where the only way to survive is wage slavery at a job you hate. Yes, some people like their job, but the exception proves the rule. I'm the exception that proves the rule in many ways because I get to largely do what I want, but most people don't. So we need to be able to have that discussion as well. Why do we have a system where you like instantly you have to, the moment you're of age, you have to get into a job you fucking find miserable, and that's the only way to get by? How is that a thing? Mark my word. You know how there was like other civilizations that lasted thousands of years, and when you were in the middle of those civilizations, Mayan, Egyptian, everything, when you were in the middle of those situations, and if you lived there, you would have said, "This is it. We have it all figured out. This is how it works." Even if you were one of the ones that was suffering under it, you were like, "Fuck, this is how it works." In the middle of those things, you always think, "This is how it works." But then those civilizations end and they go away, and then we look back on them and we go, those crazy early people. We are going to be a blip on that, on the expression, that's crazy early people. The idea that we can never evolve past capitalism, that we can never get to the point where wage slave through your entire life is the only way to work, make things work. Hey, that is a failure of imagination, my friend. That's the deeper level. And their job, this mainstream media goon right here wearing her I just want a beauty pageant sash jacket, their job is to make you never think of those lower levels. They may have debates. They can have very angry debates about whether the debt ceiling should be raised. Let's spend 24. If you turn on CNN tonight, you will hear fucking raging people. The debt ceiling should be raised. It shouldn't be raised. They'll have debates, and their job is to make you think that that's it for the discussion. That's it for the breadth of human thought. That's it for how deeply we can analyze these situations. It's just whether the debt ceiling can be raised. That's it. But what did she say again?
The Monetary Fund revised its forecast and said it.
The International Monetary Fund. Thank God we're still listening to them. That fucking entity that's in charge of economically colonizing the world for the West.
Does not anticipate a global recession. Brian Deese is one of the president's key advisors on all of this. He's the director of the National.
So this is the economic advisor for the president. Also, his last name is Deese, which means he likely yells Deese nuts a lot when he's in the office. But he's not going to reveal that here. I don't know why not, but I feel like it's just a fact.
Economic Council, and he joins us now. Brian Deese, welcome back to the News Hour. Let's begin with that debt ceiling debate. Tomorrow, President Biden will meet with Speaker McCarthy. The White House has made very clear the president will release his budget in early March. We heard the president call for the speaker to do the same. But in your conversations, do you have any sense of what Mr. McCarthy is asking for, where Republicans want to see spending cuts?
Okay, so this whole debt ceiling debate is bullshit of the grandest kind. This is theatrics of the highest level. This is Shakespeare level theatrics. The debt ceiling is bullshit. It is a made up idea that our Congress invented so that they could have these fights and say, oh, the only answer to going forward is to cut. So the Republicans could say, oh, it's to cut Medicare and Medicaid and Social Security and anything else they can come up with to cut any kind of spending that actually helps people. Post office, they don't give a shit. Cut all the things that help people. The Republicans say that, and the Democrats, well, they do a big show. They come out in their Shakespearean outfit and they go, we would never. We cannot cut those things. You cannot cut all that stuff. We can't cut. Oh no, the Democrats, Biden. We will never let them cut your Social Security. And then inevitably, they do cut a fair amount of it. And the Democrats go, we tried everything we could. And it's all a big show. It's a big fucking show. There is no reason for the debt ceiling. There is because in the United States, and again, this is the area that you can never get into on your mainstream media. They will never discuss. And I'm going to get into this again in a minute. Well, if we get to it, I might as well throw it in now. In a minute, he talks about the full faith and credit of the U.S. government. That's the thing. If we default on our debt, then we fuck up the full faith and credit of the U.S. dollar and the U.S. Backed currency and all this shit, all this load of shit. But the truth is, the United States can print as much money as we want, which is what we've been doing for years now, which is how we're, $31 trillion in debt or whatever the fuck it is now. We can print as much as we want, and it doesn't matter. The U.S. currency still largely keeps its power, keeps its spending power. And it has nothing to do with the full faith. And no one has faith in the U.S. government. No, who has faith? All we do is break treaties. We literally sign treaties with like Iran on the nuclear deal, and then we just fucking walk away from it. We sign the Paris Accords and we don't do shit. We sign treaties with the Native Americans and we ignore all of them. We just lie about our full faith and credit and all this stuff. So no one has faith in the U.S. government. The U.S. government lies their faces off all the time. So if it doesn't have to do with faith, how is it the U.S. dollar still has power? Well, the U.S. dollar has power because it's the global reserve currency and the petrodollar. The petrodollar, most oil is still sold and bought in U.S. dollars. That gives the U.S. dollar power, meaning we can print as much as we want. It continues to have power. That's how they give $4 trillion to Wall Street in the middle of the pandemic. And that money just arrives out of thin air and the dollar still has power. And the reason the US dollar is the global reserve currency is because it's the petrodollar. So these things are linked. Now, in terms of, someone's asking whether inflation matters. Yeah, it matters in that it hurts your ability to buy things. But why are those dollars? Why is there inflation? Well, it largely comes down to the way the ruling class are behaving and what they're doing. Why are prices going up? Well, the corporate entities decide to increase prices. That's truly at the heart of it. And in fact, Nixon at one time said there will be no more increase in prices. There will be no more, none of the price gouging, nothing will go up. There will be no inflation in costs. And he literally stopped it. The president can do that. And Biden can do that now. But this is a chance for corporations to both exploit workers, to enrich themselves even more by increasing prices, and same with rents, etc. And it's a chance for them to harm workers, for them to make workers' lives more difficult so that workers stop having all that power I just told you about. They stop being able to strike because they worry about the ability to sustain through a strike. All right, let's keep going.
Well, look, this is precisely the reason why the president has put the emphasis on the need for Speaker McCarthy and the House Republicans to release a budget, release those details, and show that they have a pathway to pass a budget with 218 votes in the House. That's an important predicate to having a serious conversation about fiscal and economic priorities, and it's an important moment to do that. The recent data we've seen in the economy has really been quite promising. We've seen solid economic growth. We have one of the strongest labor markets in recent history, the lowest unemployment rate in 50 years, and inflation.
See, now what he can't say is we have low unemployment, but many of these jobs are terrible. Many people are working 2 and 3 jobs in order to get by. So having a bunch of employment, yeah, it's better than not, maybe. But many people are working their asses off, and many people still can't get by. And many people are in crazy debt, crazy medical debt, crazy student loan debt. There's a massive student loan bubble, massive auto loan bubble. People are being crushed by debt while he says, oh, everyone's got a job. It's going great. Yeah, is it? Or are workers being exploited at a level that we've rarely ever seen, because that is the death spiral of capitalism. It's, to mix my metaphors, the tentacles of the fucking vampire squid slowly strengthen, slowly increase their grip on average workers, average people. And this ruling class, A, doesn't give a fuck about you. They don't care whether you're struggling, as long as Wall Street, as long as corporate stocks keep going up. And corporate stocks go up when workers are successfully exploited. That's when their stock goes up. When workers start to have power and fight back and they're not as exploited, their stock starts to go down a little. But yet again, another point that can never be brought up is we need to not grow forever. But capitalism is built on infinite growth. So it's built on the idea that this can go on forever and we'll all be fine. It'll all be great. We can cut down all the trees and everything will be fine after that, right? But of course it won't.
Inflation is coming down. It's fallen for the last 7 months. Consumers have seen that at the gas pump. Price increases are slowing at the grocery store as well. And we're seeing it in other parts of the economy. We know what we need to do. Keep focusing on reducing.
And there's so many other smaller level issues to this that can never be discussed. He talks about prices at the grocery store. Well, a handful, I think it's like 5 corporations, maybe 4, own the vast majority of the farm to fork process, every different stage of it. One of the biggest ones is Carlyle, that owns 22% of the entire process. And they're one of the largest ones. And they increase the prices along the entire route, whether it be on farms or on transport or on the grocery store. Each different layer of the route from farm to fork, they own, and they've increased prices. And that's one of the reasons that your prices at the grocery store are going up. And of course, none of that can be talked about, right? That cannot be discussed. That one company owns this massive amount of our system, because that company is they not a moment, they don't spend a fucking moment thinking about the harm done to your average person. Every single meeting they've ever had, did I say Carlisle? I meant to say Cargill. Every meeting they've ever had is about profit. It never once in those boardrooms do they sit there and go, well, will this harm people? That's not. What about people that are struggling? At no point, every moment, that is all they think about, is how they can enrich themselves even more. And so, Cargill is one example of the amount of this system that they own. But of course, there are many corporations that are that massive and control our system, control our politicians. And at no point will you hear our politicians ever saying, hey, there's something wrong with Cargill, because Cargill's funding them all. And if they're not funding them, then if they were to come out against Cargill, Cargill can fund their opponent so that they lose their seat. And you'll never hear mainstream media talk about it either, because mainstream media often funded. PBS probably had at some point been funded by Cargill. So they're not going to fucking call them to account. No.
Reducing prices for consumers, investing in the United States, building more industrial capacity and manufacturing capacity across the United States. We have all of these goals within our reach. The last thing that we can afford right now is a self-inflicted wound.
By the way, I just want to correct one thing someone said. Someone put in the chat that that Bill Gates is America's #1 farmer. Well, it's not actually true. Bill Gates, although he is an awful sociopathic fuckface, is the largest private owner of farmland. Individual owner of farmland. However, Cargill and others own way more farmland than I think, Bill Gates maybe is 1% of America's farmland or something like that. Now, for an individual, for a single human, it is a crazy amount. And people should say, A, that's fucked up that any individual should own that much. And B, why does any individual need that much? And what is he doing with it? All of those are fair questions. And people should be furious. Okay. But at the same time, let's not run around saying Bill Gates owns the most farmland. He owns the most farmland for an individual. He does not own the most farmland for a corporate entity that fucking exploit our system up and down. So just wanted to throw that in there. What was this guy? What was this clown saying? What was D's nuts saying there? He said we need to invest in America's infrastructure. Yeah, they don't. But again, this is his job behind closed doors is to say one thing, and in front of PBS NewsHour cameras to say this garbage, to say that oh, we're trying, we just want to invest in America's infrastructure, we just want growth, all these buzzwords that really mean in many ways nothing, but they're not investing in America's infrastructure. They're not rebuilding the bridges, and they have all the money they could ever want. They look at our military budget. The amount of money that goes into our military could solve all of these problems. But of course, they, again, that can't ever get mentioned. No, the Democrats, the Republicans just want to cut, Social Security. They just want to cut the amount of money that someone who is paraplegic gets to be able to get by in their life. They just want to cut that. And then the Democrats go, oh, we don't want them to, but I wish we could stop them. There's no way. We don't know how to stop them with their debt ceiling.
To try to take our economy backward.
But on that meeting tomorrow, Brian, the White House has made clear that raising the debt ceiling is not a negotiation. So why the meeting? What is it President Biden hopes to get from that face-to-face with Speaker McCarthy?
Look, honoring the full faith and credit of the United States, the obligations that we as a country have already.
There it is. There's the one I mentioned earlier. The full faith and credit of the United States. No one has any faith in the United States. All we do is lie. We lie at every level. And then he's like, well, we need to keep everybody's faith in the United States. That's what really matters here. Bullshit. That's not. The U.S. dollar has power because it's the petrodollar, because oil is bought and sold in dollars. And, here's another level of how you'll never get to the bottom of any of this shit on your mainstream media is later in this broadcast, and I'm going to try and play a little of it if I have time, although I'm running out of time. But they talk about climate catastrophes later in the broadcast. Is there any connection between this guy talking about the full faith and credit in the United States and climate catastrophes? Oh, maybe the fact that our dollar is based on the buying and selling of petroleum around the world, and we need that to keep going so that our dollar can have money, can have power. And yet, in order to survive, in order to not create our own extinction, in order to not kill off the ability of humans to survive on this goddamn planet, we need to stop using fossil fuels. How about that? Should that be part of the discussion when we talk about the dollar? No, never equate the two, never connect the two, neither of them have anything to do with each other. Really, the U.S., the largest military in the world, the most powerful country in the world, whose dollar is predicated on the endless use of fossil fuels, doesn't have any dog in the race to make sure the whole world keeps using fossil fuels? No, not at all. All right, I'd love to keep making fun of D's nuts for longer, but I'm going to skip ahead here so we can get to some other topics. Let's see, let's see what time, 11 something here. Hey, by the way, please click like, click subscribe, click thumbs up. By the way, if you're joining me on Rumble, I'm trying to get to 40,000 followers on Rumble, so if you can click the follow button, that will help a lot. All right, let's see here.
Through heavy security.
So I'm gonna talk about the story after the one she's finishing up here.
Security to enter the mosque inside a police compound. In Central Florida today, police are searching for the gunman who wounded 11 people, 2 of them critically. It happened Monday on a residential street in Lakeland as the shooters fired from their car.
All right, so mass shootings, everyone knows, most people know, they happen daily now in the United States. Literally, we average, like one a day, maybe more than one a day. And yet, in almost all of these reports, and for one thing, no, average people should not have weapons of war. And here's the thing that you never hear discussed. Yes, I defend gun rights because I don't think that the fascist police should be the only ones with a handgun, but in the United States, but we also live in a country where, in a world where everyone agrees on some weapon control, right? I've never met anyone. I'm not saying they don't exist, but it's a tiny percentage. I've never met anyone who says that every citizen should have their own grenade launcher, should have their own nuclear warhead, should have their own tank. And unless you are that maniac who says, yes, we all should have those things, then you yourself believe in some level of weapon control. What level of weapon are we allowed to have? Now, obviously, you can get all the way down to handgun. Then you can go beyond handgun down to crossbows. What level do we say no? And at what level do we say yes? And so while I defend the idea that Americans can have guns, because I don't picture a gunless America as anything that will happen anytime soon, the idea that you should be able to kill 30 people in 0.5 seconds when you feel like it on a whim is fucked up. It's simply fucked up. And if you don't understand that part of the discussion, then you're fucked up and you should really talk to someone. But that wasn't even why I brought up the story. I brought up the story because the side of this, besides what I just said, the side of this that almost never gets discussed is, why do you have people across America decide they just want to kill dozens of innocent people on a daily basis? Why is that happening? Well, it has to do with a deep spiritual destruction of human beings across America, which, I'm sorry to sound like a broken record. Some of the time, I guess it's my job, but which comes down to, when you have unfettered capitalism, there is no meaning to life. There's fucking no meaning to life. What is your meaning? That you're gonna work at the pizza place? Is that your meaning in life? And again, I understand people got to take care of their family, so I don't begrudge an average worker for working at that wage slave job. I have had many wage slave jobs throughout my life. When I was 21, I worked as a server at TGI Fridays. Talk about goddamn hell. I have experienced it. But it's completely soulless. Sure, you may convince yourself that it's okay. You may convince yourself that that you're enjoying serving potato poppers. No, what are they called? Jalapeno poppers to people. But it's a soulless, empty experience. We have destroyed communities. The people don't have community anymore. We live in our atomized little seclusion boxes of individual family homes. We put grandma in the old age home. We send the babies and the kids away to daycare, and we have complete exclusion. And then people lose their goddamn shit. And yes, statistically speaking, this is almost exclusively men that are doing these mass shootings. Out of the entire year of mass shootings, you maybe have one woman, but I'm not even sure the average year has one woman. So perhaps we should have a discussion about our society, about how it's ended up this way, about the fact that people want to murder dozens of innocent people if they can. But no, that discussion largely can't be had because you can't get to the root of capitalism. You can't get to the root of the harm that is being done to people across this nation and in many other nations around the world. Although in many other nations, they don't have access to guns that can kill dozens of people in one trigger pull. So, they have to go about it the old-fashioned way. They have to run after somebody with a sharpened end of a toothbrush or something, and then they usually get stopped pretty quickly. When you're trying to take people out, with a sharpened matchbox car, it tends to take much longer. You got to sit there poking for a half an hour. By then, the cops get you. So far less common in other countries.
Investigators said it was a targeted attack. Authorities have now offered a $5,000 reward for information. The George Santos story has taken a new turn.
All right, this story, I'm sure you've seen it because it's all the mainstream media can talk about, but it's just taking our natural progression of what our politicians are to the end game. A human being who is nothing but lies. Nothing but lies. He's got a fake name. He's got a fake resume, fake education, fake beliefs. I don't even know if his face is real. I don't know if his hair is real. I think, wasn't he also married to a woman, but also had gay relationships? So something in there is probably somewhat fake. Every level of him is fake and fraudulent, and he won election, and now he's in Congress. So I don't find this as like, oh, let's talk about him and let's be upset at him. Let's talk about a system that has created this goon and allowed him to win. It's the natural end game. I mean, Trump was pretty close. I mean, he was all lies. His entire success was based on lying about his business acumen and everything else, and losing billions of dollars and having literally thousands of lawsuits against him for not paying people or abusing people or etc. So he was a man, and yes, Biden's full of lies too, right? Every time Biden turns around, he says, I marched for civil rights. No, you fucking didn't. You were for segregation. You were a bestie of Strom Thurmond, a fucking Dixiecrat. You gave the eulogy at one of the most racist senators' funerals, who was in the Senate for 137 years. You didn't march for civil rights. You didn't care. He when he was being yelled at by climate activists, he said, hey, no one's done more for climate change than I have. Everyone's done more for climate change than you. What are you talking about? So they're all liars. But this guy somehow took it to a slightly higher level by having a fake name and resume and education and location. And do we even know he's not a hologram? I mean, but your mainstream media will act like it's just, again, it's a bad apple. Santos is a bad apple. Not his real name, by the way.
The embattled New York congressman already admitted to fabricating most of his resume, and he's facing multiple investigations. Today,
but then again, as I just described to you, everything being sold to us from the mainstream media is also lies. It's just different kinds of lies. It's lies that are accepted in our, I would call it our liberal reality, but it's liberal neocon, all that mixed together. In that reality, it is lies, but they're accepted lies, right? Like chemical weapons in Syria, Russiagate, the idea that Russia just invaded Ukraine and there was nothing that led to that. There was no Maidan coup in 2014. There's no Nazis in Ukraine. It's kind of this accepted lie we all live in. It's like we're all living in the, the prime of Lance Armstrong. And there's like a couple of people who are like, I think he's taking some drugs. I think he's on something. And 99% of the country is wearing yellow wristbands and going, you're full of shit. He's a hero. Where's your wristband? And that's where we are. And there's just a couple of us off to the sides, although I've done live streams in the past few days about continuing the continued revelations of just how fake Russiagate was. Again, I'm no Trump fan, but Russiagate was loads of bullshit for 4 straight years. And now it's all coming out, the reality of it. But so they're all liars. So this Santos guy is maybe a tad more of a liar because he's not lying about his beliefs or his policies. He's lying about like where he went to college. By the way, Joe Biden, if anyone needs reminding, the first time he ran for president in the 1980s, I'm not kidding. For those of you who were born in 2006 going, what? Yeah. Joe Biden first ran for president in the 1980s. He had far less hair then. Not sure where he gets his hair now, but for when he first ran for president in the 1980s, he had to stop running because it came out he was plagiarizing his speeches from a British politician. So the level of lies and the length of the lies and I almost celebrate Santos. It's like, how could these lies get any worse? How can they get any crazier? Oh, by the way, we're going to continue this right now. Rumble.com/Lee Camp. It's free to be over there and watch, and it's all going right now. You can just go join rumble.com/Lee Camp. Also, become a member at leecamp.net. By the way, I'm going to keep going through these clips because she's going story to story to story, and I'm just going to keep tearing them all apart. I'm also going to air the new episode of Most Censored News. You really shouldn't miss that, about how the United States is crushing one of the happiest and most peaceful countries on the planet. I'm not kidding, literally. So I'm going to show you all that. That's at rumble.com/Lee Camp. I have to do that. Why do I have to do that? Because YouTube has deleted one of my main YouTube channel. They've Spotify deleted my podcast but now it's under a new name on Spotify called The Lee Camp Show. So if you're a Spotify fan, get it. Look up The Lee Camp Show. I also have 2 other podcasts, Government Secrets and Common Censored. But all right, we're going to continue at rumble.com/Lee Camp. Can you join me there? Are you man or woman or other enough to join me there? I hope you are. I hope you are. All right.